First up, we have David Siegel talking about thinking outside of the ad box. David is the CEO of Investopedia. He's also was recently president of Seeking Alpha.
So I'm going to try to wake everyone up a little bit. Just had lunch, so we're gonna get a little energy in the room. So even though I'm CEO of Investopedia, my real claim to fame is that 30 years ago, Ellie Mandelbaum and I were in Camp Moshava together in Honesdale, Pennsylvania. So he is the real success story of Moshava, if you know Moshava at all, B'nai Akiva, because he is the one who made Aliyah, and I'm only a CEO. His is much more important. I thought I'd start with a story about how Investopedia had absolutely no idea what was going on with ad blocking. Okay, so we have a leaderboard ad on every page of Investopedia. So in theory, the number of leaderboard impressions on our site should equal the number of page views on our site, right? About 3 years ago, there was about a 2 or 3% discrepancy between leaderboard impressions through our ad server and Dart impressions and impressions through Google Analytics. And we thought, okay, you know, no big deal, just can't be exactly the same, whatever. 2 years ago, it went to about an 8% difference. And we were walking around and and people were saying to each other, I guess Google isn't as tight as they used to be. I guess Google's really off. We know the answer was not that. About a year ago, we started seeing that the difference between our leaderboard volume of leaderboard impressions and our page views was up to a 15% discrepancy. That's when people started talking about ad blocking software. We knew we had a challenge. I'm going to be talking about 3 different things, including ad blocking, though after the last ad blocking presentation, I may skip that. So I'll hide if anyone has to throw anything at me, but hopefully we're all on the same side here. And today, there's only less than a 2% difference from the previous 15% difference that existed between the number of leaderboard impressions that we have on Investopedia and our number of page views. And I'm going to talk about what we did in Investopedia. So I'm going to talk about 3 things. Thing number 1 is what we do around ad blocking. Number 2 is programmatic sales, what we do as a publisher. And number 3, some of our native data-driven ad solutions. So here we go. A little bit about Investopedia. We are the world's largest financial education site. Okay? What that means is it's our mission to help people to simplify the complexities of finance and to make investing less intimidating. That's our focus. This is what we care about. This is what we're passionate about. In the US, there are tens of thousands of individuals who are retiring, every day, and there's an incredible lack of preparedness for retirement, for personal finance, for investing, for the markets, etc. Okay, so we're pretty big. So we do over 21 million monthly uniques across both the US and outside. Quick show of hands. Hopefully some of you have ever looked up a term on Investopedia. Raise your hand. Phew. Okay, thank you. We appreciate it. We have over 71 million page views a month. We have over 500,000 Facebook followers, over 4 million email newsletter receivers. About a little over 50% of our traffic is in the US, and about 48% of our traffic is outside of the US, mostly in English-speaking countries. A very small percentage in Israel, but I would love for it to grow. So please, after this, look something up. On our site, we're a real content generation machine. So we produce 20,000 pieces of content a year. 20,000. So that includes articles, terms, FAQs, videos. We have over 2,000 videos on our site. That's just a little bit about Investopedia as a company. Last thing is, this is important, Joseph Mandelbaum had mentioned IAC. IAC is a large company with about over $4 billion market cap. IAC owns Investopedia, which is, of course, this crown jewel. At least I try to believe that it is. In addition to that, Vimeo, Match, Tinder, College Humor, About.com, Ask.com, Home Advisor, Daily Beast, etc. The reason why that's important is because the way in which we're structured is that we have a number of shared services that we're able to leverage across each of the different business areas. So when I get to talking about programmatic, you're going to hear about how we leverage programmatic buying across each of the different areas within IAC. We also happen to have experts in email, experts in social, experts in each of these different areas. And frankly, we leverage some of those experts that have helped us grow from about less than 1% of our traffic a year ago came from social. Today, it's over 7% of our traffic comes from social. So it's a big deal, and IAC has been very helpful with that. So now, I was debating whether I was going to skip the entire ad blocking section. I sat someone next to me. This is my first conference in Israel, and I said, are conferences in Israel always this, debating and discussing? Because, so I was told that this was a special, unique occurrence. So we will still proceed. When something is in the mainstream media, you know that it's a big deal. So we're going to see a quick clip from one of my favorite radio personalities. You'll recognize him in a second.
By the way, how does Tinder, to me, it must cost a fortune to run that technology on Tinder, because you're hooking people up. You got to have servers and all that stuff.
I think
how do they get paid? Yeah, how are they monetizing that?
They started throwing ads into it, so you're swiping along, I guess, and then an ad pops up. But I don't know how much money that can get them.
I hate ads on the internet. Now, whenever I go, someone sends me a YouTube clip, the only place I ever see commercials is on YouTube, because I got to sit through 30 seconds to see this clip.
Right.
There's
you got to get ad block, man.
You got to what?
Ad block. You can get it for your browser or whatever, and it'll just knock out all the YouTube ads.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And it'll go straight to the clips?
Yep.
Oh, dude.
I've been using it.
How does I've got all kind of IT people. How do they not know
about that? Huh?
It's really easy to download, but I've been using it. It skips all the ads. It's amazing.
Gary, contact my IT person and tell them I want that.
And it blocks the ads on websites, like other websites, like the ones that are in the sides and the corners.
Oh, that's beautiful.
It's all gone.
You have that, Robin?
No, I'm sitting here listening to this because, like you, and I don't even understand those ads that you watch 15 seconds of them.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay. So you know something's mainstream when Howard Stern is talking about it. Just leave it at that. Incredible radio personality. So I thought this quote was really interesting from Dave Carroll about the ad blocking industry. And we're talking about a couple of stats, and we're going to go into our solution around ad blocking and how we achieve the successes that we have. In terms of how big it is, 200 million people, 250 million people, half the size of Pinterest, 2/3 the size of Twitter. A great way to think about it is if ad blocking was its own unicorn, it would be $1 billion valuation, which could happen at some point. 19% of people, according to what I've seen is the most comprehensive study on ad blocking, came out recently. If you'd like to get a copy of it, I could send you a copy of it. My email will come up later. It's called the Consumer Ad Blocking Report. It's filled with comprehensive information. Highly recommend you look at it. 19% of users are using ad blocking, and an amazing 50% are interested in pursuing ad blocking software at some point, according to the study. 75% of people believe that companies believe the ad blocking problem will continue to grow. 33% of companies think it's a top priority, and 40% reported 12% or greater issue. Now let's talk about what Investopedia did when it noticed that it had an issue. So really, we looked at three things. The first thing we looked at was whitelisting. So I think you all know what whitelisting is. It's essentially we put up a little prestitial ad which people could click out of, and we had about a 2% click-through rate. We were getting 200 users or so a day to whitelist Investopedia. That's a nice number, 200 users. It's great. But in the context of having 21 million monthly unique users, going to take a very long time for those 200 users to actually add up to something meaningful. We did not decide to pursue that. We investigated whether we want to pursue content blocking. We did talk to our colleagues at Forbes, at the Washington Post, at a number of different companies that tried content blocking. It was not something that as CEO I felt comfortable because of the mission of our company around educating finance, not letting people get access to our content. We investigated whether or not we wanted to pursue micro payments of $1 or whatever it is to access our content. We ultimately didn't pursue that. What we ended up pursuing was a partnership with a company called PageFair. You may or may not know them. There are other companies that do similar things. We're the first IAC company to partner with them. Essentially, it provides contextually relevant, non-invasive ad solutions. Privacy is protected, no third-party data, etc. In a nutshell, and most of you know this, they put code on our site. They are able to see whether the user has an ad blocking software or not. And if it does, then we only serve up a static ad with no other kind of tags in it except for that's clickable. And that's it. And what I would say to that is it's working out great. We're recovering over 35 million impressions a month. It's a big deal. It certainly has a revenue impact for us. About 12% of our impressions are being recovered. You can see here, it's hard to tell, it's a little bit grainy, so my apologies. But on the right-hand side is an ad blocker on before PageFair. You don't see any ads. Ad blocker with PageFair. It's a static ad only. Ad blocker off. You can't tell it's dynamic, but essentially it's a dynamic ad. The most important thing is what I care about as a CEO is I care about our users. That's what we're in it for. We're all about helping our users. We get over 1,000 pieces of feedback a week from our users. We partner with a company called Feedbackify. If you don't know them, it's worthwhile to look into their technology. It's a little tag on the right-hand side that allows us to get feedback. I personally read every single piece of feedback on our site. The amount of user feedback that we have received from these static ads that are coming up is so de minimis, it's almost close to zero. It's not even a tenth of 1%, not even tenth of 1%, frankly, of the feedback that we get. And that's particularly important because ultimately, if we were to see significant backlash around it, then we would potentially make other decisions, and we are not. So I want to just share that with everyone. Okay. We are seeing, however, not surprisingly, a higher percentage outside of the US than in the US. And just on the theme of feedback, I will share with you, not many of you are publishers in the room, but one of the things that we really pride ourselves in is we get people's email addresses whenever they give feedback. And anytime that we then make a change, we have a process in place where we then send the link to the person who gave us that feedback with an error that was fixed or information that needed updating or whatever it may be. And that creates these wow experiences where it creates users for life when they see us actually truly making changes to our site because of the specific feedback that they gave. Let's talk about programmatic next. Okay. Now, point number one is around dedicated resources. Previously, when we were operating as a standalone company, so I should add, IAC acquired Investopedia about 2 years ago. When we were a standalone company and we weren't leveraging IAC's resources, we had a third of an ad ops person who really had almost no experience in programmatic, who was attempting to both sell and serve and work with all the different providers and exchanges, et cetera. It was really kind of ridiculous. We then transitioned to leveraging IAC's shared resource. We now have 2 full-time people who are working with different private marketplaces. We have 2 people who are working with all the different open auctions. We have a rules-based system where we have minimal pricing tiers. We look at supply and demand to make decisions on a real-time basis around everything around programmatic. Second point is around valuable relationships. Okay, so what's happening in the publishing space for ad sales individuals is it used to be that there were a salesperson, let's say in Chicago, and that salesperson would sell into the budgets at both the direct budget and then try to get some programmatic budget as well. And we tried that, and we have our 8 to 10 salespeople around the country who are trying to sell both direct business to the Schwabs and the E-Trades and the BlackRocks and the Vanguards of the world, and they were also trying to have the conversation with programmatic. But the reality is that the message was completely different. It was a completely different sales tactic to talk to someone about programmatic and direct sales. And we figured that out because we were way behind in terms of programmatic revenue. So our programmatic revenue is going to go from about, direct programmatic revenue, direct, not through exchanges, from about $300,000 to about $1.5 million year over year. And the main reason for that is we hired a dedicated programmatic rep who knows the language of how to talk to the different agencies and different trading desks out there, and that's had a very significant impact. The other point that I want to bring up around programmatic for us is prioritization. Many publishers do not put programmatic buying at the same level as guaranteed sales, direct sales. They put them at kind of a secondary tier. We don't. We put them all in the exact same tier, and frankly, we're not worried about not being able to deliver on our guaranteed revenue because ultimately we're able to make adjustments as necessary mid-campaign, but everything is on the same tier. We also have built out a header bidding solution that eliminates latency. I'm not going to go into too much detail on that. Ultimately, at the end of the day, our CPMs are up 24% year over year on programmatic, which we're ecstatic about. I'm happy to even share what our programmatic CPMs on desktop are. Because we're in the finance vertical, it tends to be really strong. We're between $7 and $8.50 on average our programmatic CPMs. So it's really quite good. Now that's meaningfully less than our direct sales, which is closer to the $15 to $20 range. But still, getting $7 to $8 programmatic CPMs ain't bad at all. So we're quite happy with the results thus far. Okay, we're going to go to native right now. And it's important to just say up front that because finance, there's a lot of regulations and compliance that are necessary, many asset management firms like the BlackRocks of the world and the other companies that I've said are more reluctant to participate as aggressively in native solutions than many lifestyle-driven type businesses. So there's a little bit of a slower wave within native in our industry. It's similar to pharma to some extent, where there's a lot of regulation there as well, and it's a little bit slower to native. With that said, it's still very important. I'll share with you a quick story about native, which is really important to our strategy at Investopedia. So it was August 24th of last year, around 6 months ago. Came to the office, I looked at the Dow to see where it was that day. I don't know if many of you remember this particular date. Many of you hopefully were on vacation at this time. Fortunately, I wasn't. And the Dow was down pre-market by 1,000 points. 1,000 points. It ended up recovering decently during that day. 1,000 points. I'm sweating. I'm thinking about my retirement savings. I don't know what's going on. I think we're going to hit another recession, correction, whatever it is. Suddenly, the head of marketing runs into my office, and he says, "David, you're not going to believe this." And I said, "What?" He said, "Our short-selling tutorial is going through the roof." And I thought, wow, there's something there. There's something that's going on Investopedia that's really real time, that's happening, that can be a potential signal for the larger market around data-driven solutions. So we started investigating how potentially our data can be a signal for the market, how our data can learn new things, and how that can potentially provide really interesting native solutions. So for example, CBOE runs the VIX. The VIX measures volatility, and we're talking about right now about a really interesting native solution with the VIX around some of the data that we have. And just to talk about this, sorry again, a little hard to read, but what this shows is that as we look at the changes in the S&P, so when the S&P is down by 2%, the term correction on Investopedia is up by 100%. When the S&P is down by 4%, the term correction is up by 200%, on average, essentially. So it's interesting stuff. We actually then hired 2 full-time, actually astrophysicists, PhDs, data scientists. We have 3 full-time data analysts who have built out a technology within Investopedia that we use for something called our topic sizing technology. So I said we created a lot of content at Investopedia. So what they do is we look at a myriad of information across every single social media platform, dozens of major publishing sites, Google Trends, you name it. And we're able to look at what the current supply of a piece of content is, a topic is, what the demand for that content is, what the differentiation is between demand and supply, meaning we want to produce content where there is a high level of demand and a low level of supply. And then we'll create a dozen articles around that particular, not hundreds, but 5 to 10 articles around that particular topic. So for example, we found that when people want to retire in Cambodia or in Thailand, there's actually more content out there than people are looking for. So we create 1 or 2 articles around that to be comprehensive. But when it comes to retiring in the Philippines, oh my God, there are tons of people that want to learn about retiring in the Philippines, so we created 10 to 15 articles, and we're still getting 1,000 to 2,000 organic searches a day on many of these content pieces that we created, all through the work of our data sciences team. So we take the work from the data sciences team. That allows us to build really interesting native solutions for clients where we can help our clients to actually build a strategy about what kind of content to focus on, because certain content is going to ultimately perform better than other content that's out there. In addition to that, I'll share 3 other just brief things that we're doing in native. The 3 are, number 1 is we work with a company called Nativo. I don't know if you know them. Some people might be competitors with them, etc. in the room. We work with them on related content modules, where if someone's looking around something around IRA or 401k, or these are retirement tools in the States, then there'll be related content, and we work with them there. That's worked very well. We've created something in partnership with many of our advertisers called Thought Leadership Centers. And for those of you who are focused on native, you should pay attention to this one, because we're seeing a tremendous amount of traction in this particular area. A Thought Leadership Center is essentially, we're creating a center called an ETF center, or a mutual fund center, or a retirement center, etc. We're partnering with a well-known, again, asset management firm or brokerage. We will ingest their videos, ingest their content into this center. It is appropriately labeled, obviously. Any content that is included must go through our editorial team. So we do not let people just post something that's self-promotional in that area. It needs to be reviewed by the team. And those Thought Leadership Centers, we then charge on a CPV basis, on a cost per visit basis. So we'll charge a $4, a $5, a $6 cost per visit to engage in these big engagement centers. Those are fantastic for the advertising clients because they truly own ETFs. They truly own retirement. They truly own credit cards, whatever they specifically own. It's great for us because we can partner with a well-known brand out there. And that's the second area that we're focused on in terms of native. And the third is we have a fair amount of native text links on our site as well, which frankly we just charge on a CPC basis, a cost per click basis. We will do about $1.5 million to $2 million of revenue simply from a short paragraph that's labeled appropriately, of course, after an article. So again, native is something that is important to us and certainly growing. Moving on to the last slide here. So learnings, you know, everyone has similar learnings, and I'll try to give a couple of examples in mind. The first is test some more before scaling. We obviously tested a whitelisting solution around ad blocking. We saw that while we were getting 200 people to say, I love Investopedia, I am happy to see ads from Investopedia, which is a beautiful thing. Ultimately, that was not going to move a meaningful needle in the context of having 20 million plus uniques. But we tested it, we learned from it, and we are going to be continuing to experiment further there. The second is listening to customers. I talked about getting feedback. The most important thing for every publisher is to have a feedback mechanism with its users. That's what it comes down to. Number 3 is we took a fairly aggressive approach around identifying positive consumer ad experiences and eliminating those that were negative. So in the last year, we've been very, very proactive in eliminating negative user ad experiences. So for example, we used to have a pre-stitial on every page when you first landed on Investopedia. Outside of the US, I believe we still do. In the US, we don't have a pre-stitial anymore. It will come on only after you've seen 2, 3, X number of pieces of content first. So there's a payback. The second is on mobile. We had way more ads than we should have had. We eliminated at least 50% of our ads in order to improve the user experience. On video, we would have too many 30-second pre-roll slots. I would say 98%. We basically priced a 30-second pre-roll slot dramatically higher than a 15-second pre-roll slot. So about 98% of our pre-roll is only 15 seconds, which is a far better user experience than a 30-second pre-roll before a 2-minute, 3-minute video. That's been really important. Lastly, we actually take a very differentiated approach to the ad experience depending on the source of traffic. So what I mean by that is if someone comes directly to Investopedia, directly to our site, they're coming to our brand because they know and love Investopedia, we're going to treat that user differently than if they came because we have a relationship with Yahoo or because we have a relationship with Facebook. Because they may have just seen an article on Yahoo and come over there. It could be a one-time Charlie versus if they're coming directly to our site. And we have different experiences for direct, different experiences for email and social, and different experiences for referral and SEO traffic. And that's been an important strategy for us as well. Last things that I'll say is we obviously are in the fortunate position to leverage our colleagues at IAC. That's been very, very helpful. And obviously going to events like this, which really allow us to keep up with trends in the industry is something great. Really, the only thing I want to say is I wanted to thank Ellie and everyone here for inviting me to talk a little bit about Investopedia, what we're doing around ad blocking, programmatic sales, native solutions, and our data-driven approach. I love Israel, and it's really wonderful to be here. So thank you very, very much.